Today, I'm going to be trying the lowest input delay controller settings. So as always, if you do find yourself enjoying this video, drop a like on it. It helps out a lot. And if you like this style of video, then go ahead and subscribe to the channel because I make a ton just like this one. Alright, so I'm assuming all of you know what input delay actually is. If you don't, a very basic explanation is that it's the delay from the time you actually touch a button on your controller or move your joystick until the time that it actually happens in-game. So if you've ever went from playing on a console to playing on a PC, you'll notice that PC has way less input delay. And that's also the same reason why going from PC back to console is so hard to adjust, because there's so much more of a delay. So Fortnite actually has some settings where you can turn this stuff on, and in-game you can actually see your total input delay. So right to the left of my ping, it says my total delay is right around 4 milliseconds, which 4 milliseconds is literally nothing. I mean, this is 4 milliseconds. It's almost completely unnoticeable. However, that 4 milliseconds for me is only in creative. In an actual game, it's going to be a little higher, and I'm actually using a standard PS4 controller with a wired connection, so that helps a lot for my input delay. Some controllers can have more input delay, some controllers can have less input delay. However, regardless of what controller you're using, there's actually some settings in-game that you can change to get lower input delay. So from what I was able to find, if you play on PC, the best thing you can do to lower input delay is to actually turn off VSync. The next thing you can do in-game is actually head over to the controller tab, and on PC you can actually change the controller platform. You can choose if you're on an Xbox controller, PS4, or generic, and from what people say, generic has the lowest input delay. So just from doing that, it looks like our input delay is staying at a more steady, like higher 3s than it is in the 4s. So far those two settings do seem to help a little bit. And then the next best thing to do is to actually go on performance mode. Alright, so now as you can see, my character is insanely blurry. We can just fix that by turning back up the 3D resolution, but to get the ultimate low input delay, we have to turn our meshes to low, which makes those bubble wrap looking builds. And then over here, once we're in performance mode, you want to make sure your VSync turned off. As you can see right there on the actual setting, it literally says disabling VSync can give higher frame rate and better input response. And look at that, I'm down consistently into the mid 2s for my input delay. That's actually crazy. And just to mention, this is while I actually have OBS open and recording, and every time I have OBS open, I notice some extra input delay anyways. So when you do this and you're not using OBS, it'll likely be even lower than this. So I'm curious to see how this actually feels, and wow, that actually is a pretty insane difference. This literally feels so smooth. That's actually crazy. I honestly didn't think it was gonna be that big of a difference, but holy, I'm actually curious, do you guys mind watching players that play on low meshes with these kind of bubble wrap looking builds? To me, I always think that viewers want to see like higher quality gameplay, but if this makes me actually play better like it seems like it is, then it actually might be worth it to actually turn on. Let me know down in the comments what your guys' preference is. And I'm gonna do a quick test where I close OBS and actually just use the NVIDIA clip system to take a clip, and let's see if we can get this number even lower. So now I don't have a face cam, but we can see that this number is consistently staying at 2.2 milliseconds, which is actually nuts. When I start actually moving, it's gonna go up a little bit, but really not much. Now it's barely breaking into the 3s, when at the beginning of this video it's breaking into the 5s. And this actually makes my edits and everything feel so smooth. This is pretty nuts. And then of course I open OBS and it goes back up to like 2.5, 2.6, and then when I actually start building and stuff, it goes into the 3s. Just out of curiosity, I wonder how much FPS I can get on this. I'm getting up into the 800s in FPS. That's insane. But my monitor is only 144 hertz, so I only need 160 frames really. I did find this pretty interesting chart here that talks about the different controllers and the different input delays that each one has. So if we take a look here, this is the mean input delay or input lag. It says Arduino is 10.5 milliseconds, which I think that means that's like the very base minimum amount of time to get a signal from an external device into the PC. And then it looks like the lowest input delay possible comes from a DualShock 4 controller over Bluetooth. So that's actually really interesting. That's not something that I would have guessed. Then it says Steam controller button is next at plus 6 milliseconds. And you have an Xbox One controller, whether it's wired or Bluetooth, comes in at 6.9 milliseconds. An Xbox 360 wired comes in at 8.3. A PS4 wired connection comes in at plus 10. which is really interesting. And then it just keeps going up with some of the older controllers. So it looks like the very lowest input delay possible is achieved by using Bluetooth on a PS4 controller. However, the issue with that is when you're not on a wired connection, the stability of your actual controller connection is not very good. So even if you have super low input delay at one point, it can fluctuate or even lose connection completely at a different point. And that is why most people will suggest just using a wired connection, because then you don't have to worry about any sort of stability issues. Plus, you don't have to worry about your controller dying or using any batteries or anything like that. It's just plugged in. One more thing that I know you can do to get the input delay even lower is you can overclock your controller. And so I just went in and I actually overclocked my controller by using this whole process. The whole process really isn't very complicated at all, but it took me a little bit to show off in this video. Really, all you have to do is Google or type into the YouTube search bar and this will come up. So as we can see here, I have my controller. My B interval is now 1 instead of the default 5 that it typically is, and my filter rate is 1000, which is the max that you can do. So now my controller is overclocked, and it looked like it might have helped it like just a tiny bit. It's sitting right about 2.4 to 2.5 milliseconds, and again, this is with my OBS open. With my OBS closed, it looks about the same, 2.2 to 2.3. So I think now I'm gonna head into some actual games and see what kind of input delay we get in creative matchmaking and some actual public matches, and I'm gonna see if this lower input delay can actually make me any better at Fortnite. So to completely maximize my potential benefits of input delay, I'm not recording using OBS, I'm only recording using the clip system. Dude, this input delay is actually like, it makes my game feel so much better, and it actually makes me feel like I'm playing a lot better. Even though it's a little higher when I'm actually playing other players, it's like 3 to 4, it still feels so much better than what it typically is. Alright, so that's pretty interesting. In a pretty stacked arena late game lobby, looks like we're getting about 5 millisecond delay, but there is about 23 people left, and arena late game is just laggy in general. So I can't say that I'm actually disappointed about this. I'm actually pretty satisfied with it. So it looks like in an actual solos match, we're looking at about 3 or even like 4, right around there. And that's honestly way less than I actually thought it would be. It's not even too much different than it is in actual creative, which is pretty surprising. I didn't know RPGs were back in this game. You know, performance mode is still weird. It does actually take some getting used to. However, I do think it's worth it because the input delay benefit. It's pretty nuts. That's actually funny. You know what? I'm fine with my 5 elims there. That was a pretty solid game to test out the input lag. Thanks so much for watching, and I hope to catch you in a future video.